Chapter 3. The Narrowing Ascent. A flicker of hope. From the crack came a flicker of light. Not flame, not electric, something else entirely. A breeze stirred the hair of Marja's neck. "What is that?" she whispered. Ony took a step forward, his hand finding the on switch on his headlamp in the dark with practiced ease. Light flooded the opening. Let's find out. The crack was narrower than it had looked. Batu studied it for only a moment before pulling off his pack. "I go first," he said. It was not bravado, just fact. He cinched the rope tighter around his shoulder, shoved the pack ahead of him, and lowered himself into the opening, with the calm of a man who had spent too much of his life squeezing through places that did not want him there. Though broader than either of them, he moved with a strange efficiency, emptying his lungs before each push, angling one shoulder, then the other, letting the rock dictate the shape of his body rather than wasting strength fighting it.
The lattice calls, we feel it shift. The air grows thin, the earth will lift. What once held fast begins to sway. The laws we trust begin to stray.
Ony eased himself forward. The stone was damp, cold enough to sting through his gloves, veined with mica, and the same purple-red mineral they had seen earlier, this time without the warmth. The space compressed around his ribs. When he inhaled, his chest brushed the stone. When he exhaled, his shirt clung to the rock in front of him. There was no turning around, no shifting sideways, no widening it with tools. Forward or backward, those were the only options. And backward meant returning to the maze they'd already lost themselves in. Ahead of him, Batu kept moving, somehow steady even in the squeeze. Ony could hear him more than see him now. The scrape of jacket against rock, the dull shove of a knee finding purchase, the controlled bursts of breath. He was not having an easier time of it. He just knew how to move in places like this, how to save panic for later and oxygen for now. Behind him, Marja grunted with effort. Her boots scraped once, then stopped. "You good?" Ony asked, his voice muffled by stone. "Just don't stop," she answered. The tremor in her breath was small, but unmistakable. From somewhere ahead, Batu's voice drifted back through the crack, low and even. "Do not fight it. Empty lungs, then move. The stone does not care if you are afraid." Marja made a strained sound that might have been a laugh if fear had not thinned it first. She felt the rock closing in around her, not only in a physical sense, though it scraped her elbows and pressed her pack straps painfully into her ribs, but in the way a story closes around a single trapped figure. Her mind leapt to every burial chamber she'd ever studied. All those ancient people who had crawled into tight spaces with faith or fear or desperation. She wasn't panicking, not yet, but the cave was forcing its weight onto her breath, thinning it, shortening it. Each push forward stole a fraction more space from her body. The thought of getting stuck flickered across her mind like a blade, not dying quickly, but slowly, wedged and unseen, a cautionary figure in someone else's excavation report. The crack tightened again. Ony felt the stone press against both shoulders. His helmet scraped the ceiling, pushing his head at an angle. Ahead, Batu paused only long enough to test the next rise with a boot and a shoulder, then folded himself upward again, with the grim patience of a man who trusted motion more than comfort. They inched. Not climbed, not walked, inched. Every shuffle forward felt like a negotiation with the earth itself, and the earth was undecided. The shaft continued angling in a slow, grinding ascent, tight enough to bruise, rising just enough to punish the thighs. Ony's knees scraped raw. His back throbbed. Dust clogged his throat. But he pushed forward, the faint draft ahead teasing like a promise. He tried not to think about how far underground they still were, or how long they'd been here. He tried, but time had become a question without an answer. Tight spaces. He didn't mind tight spaces, at least not the normal kind. He'd spent days mapping narrow karst crawlways near Lake Baikal, the kind where you had to pivot your hips just right to squeeze through. But those had still been spaces, places he could angle his shoulders, twist, retreat if he needed to. This was different. This crack wasn't a tunnel, it was a vise. Stone pressed his chest with every inhale, scraped his collarbone with every exhale. There was no room to turn his head, no chance to back out if anything shifted. For the first time in years, the earth felt less like terrain to study and more like something that wanted to keep him. He was older now. His muscles still remembered how to move, but his joints whispered protest in the cold. His back ached when he carried too much. His breath shortened in the thin mountain air. It wasn't weakness, not yet, but it was a horizon, a reminder. This cave could be his last major find. He thought of the emails, the silence from Jamray's sponsors, the polite rejections wrapped in academic jargon. Promising as the region is, your funding request has not been selected at this time. We encourage you to resubmit during our next cycle. That cycle never came. Each denial had carved a little deeper into the future he'd imagined for himself, for all of them. Grants drying up, students leaving, projects abandoned. He needed this discovery to matter. Not in a selfish way, but in the way a drowning man needs a foothold to keep him above the water. And in the crushing dark of the crawl space, the thought of that, of a future where Jamray wasn't fading, was almost a relief. Better to think about funding than the fact that his chest was scraping stone with every breath. Better to picture the bored, stunned faces than imagine getting trapped here, in a crack barely wide enough to claim a body. For a few precious heartbeats, hope was stronger than fear.
In violet veins, the silence sings, a force unfastens buried things. No hand to guide, no voice to warn, yet something bends